Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arup's Digital Horizons series. My name's Dr. Serryn Eagleson, and I lead Arup's GIS and Data Insights team in Arup's Melbourne office in Australia. I'll be your host for this session, which is titled "How Are Digital Twins and Digital Asset Management Accelerating Decarbonisation?" From my perspective, I can really see that we're at a pivotal time. We've got accelerating technology and opportunities to harness that technology, especially with AI. And we also have at the time a climate emergency. And so we really need to come together as a community to have this discussion and really accelerate how we're going to address these challenges that we see. It's customary in Australia that before we begin an event, that I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are located. For me, this is Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. And I'd also like to extend this acknowledgement to the lands on which you may be joining us from. Now, thank you for joining our Digital Horizons event. This is part of a 3-day series of events, and we've been addressing a number of really critical topics, including AI for positive impact, digital and data for net zero climate resilience, and nature positive world. And today's focus, as I mentioned, is really about how are digital twins and digital asset management, or how could they, be accelerating decarbonisation. The format for our event will be an introduction by Will Cavendish, and we'll also have a keynote presentation from Alexandra Luck, who is the Program Director, the National Digital Twin Program for the UK. Following Alexandra's keynote, we will have a panel discussion and we will be joined by Dr. Victor Khoo, Director of the Singapore Land Authority, James Morgan, Head of Energy Digitalisation Department for Energy Security and Net Zero in the UK, Dr. Pascal Perez, Director of the Australian Urban Research Infrastructure Network, and Rick Gell, Senior Director of Space Operations and Delivery at the Alibaba Group. And this panel will be facilitated by Simon Evans, Director and Global Digital Energy Leader at Arup. We encourage the audience to submit questions during our session, and you can do that via the chat. For now, I would like to kick off our series by having an introduction by Will Cavendish, a Digital Services Lead at Arup.
Welcome to Arup's global webinar series, Digital Horizons. It's fantastic to bring people together, both on our panel and online, to explore a topic that I know many of us care deeply about: how we can use digital to achieve meaningful impact in shaping a better future for the built environment. Many people here will be confronting the same generational challenge we're facing here at Arup. How can we meet the human needs of the roughly 10 billion people that will soon be living on our planet, while at the same time reducing significantly the huge and detrimental environmental footprint of our sector? Through this 3-day webinar series, we want to explore how digital, data technology and AI can support us in meeting this challenge. Part of this is about providing real-world, tangible examples of where we're already making progress to inspire and give a legitimate sense of hope, but also to explore some of the barriers to getting the most out of these solutions and figure out how we can all go further, faster. Today, we're looking at the question of how digital twins and digital asset management can help accelerate decarbonisation. At Arup, we've enthusiastically adopted these digital technologies to help our clients in seeking to achieve their critical decarbonisation goals. For example, as we move towards a net zero future, having a renewable, resilient, efficient and digitally managed energy grid is critical. We're delighted to be part of this transformation with some groundbreaking initiatives that are shaping the future of energy. One of our key projects is our collaboration with Great Britain's electricity system operator, ESO, on the Virtual Energy System programme. The aim is to create the world's first ecosystem of connected digital twins, bringing together the physical and digital aspects of the UK's energy system seamlessly, to allow ESO to plan and operate the net zero electricity grid of the near future. In other areas, we've developed digital solutions that integrate our engineering expertise with advanced algorithms and AI-based data insights to manage major infrastructure better and safely extend their life. In built environment sectors as varied as property, bridges, transport, and offshore wind, digital is saving operational carbon by 30% or more through supporting better asset management, and saving significant embodied carbon by safely repurposing assets or extending their life by 10, 30, or even 100 years. Digital twins and digital asset management technologies are critical components of the future of the built environment. These technologies provide a comprehensive, data-driven approach to managing assets, enhancing efficiency, sustainability, and resilience throughout the asset lifecycle. And these technologies can be harnessed to galvanise decarbonisation in the built environment, whether this is being looked at via a Scope 1, Scope 2 or Scope 3 lens, or as embodied versus operational carbon. So given that, what can be done to accelerate these approaches? How can we make them the norm rather than the exception? What are the quickest and most cost-effective ways to develop and embed these approaches on an industry or global basis? There is an imperative need for more decisive action on carbon than we've achieved to date. And so if we have successful approaches, we need to deploy them at pace. These and many more are some of the issues that I hope our panel will address, bringing examples from across sectors and across the world and highlighting best practice. I hope you all enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Will. And that's an amazing amount of work ahead of us. And he's really set out the gauntlet there to, we need to provide decisive action. And so this will be one of the themes that will carry through our panel discussion. I'd now like to introduce Alexandra Luck. She's the Program Director at the National Digital Twin Program in the UK. She is a Chartered Engineer, a Fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers, a Fellow of the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation, and a member of the Register of Security Engineers and Specialists. She has a wealth of experience in issues pertaining to asset and risk management, digital engineering, management of information and security-minded approaches, accumulating expertise through a number of engineering roles. Alexandra specialises in the development, implementation, management, and auditing of policies and processes, as well as the development and delivery of programs within these disciplines. She is currently the Program Director of the National Digital Twin Program at the Department for Business and Trade. Alexandra, delighted for you to be with us today to share your keynote presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. So yes, as I've just been introduced, so I'm based at the Department for Business and Trade in UK government, and I'm Programme Director for the National Digital Twin Programme. And I thought what I would cover today really in this keynote is a little bit about the programme and how it is seeking to support this agenda of accelerating decarbonisation. So for those of you that are not familiar with the programme, what it is really here to do is not to create a national digital twin for the UK per se, but rather to look at what all of those underpinning requirements are that will facilitate individuals to bring together what we refer to as the models, the shadows, and the twins. So if you like, the data exploitation tools that will enable some of these key policy areas that we need to try and deliver on. And what we also need is really important is to be able to do that in a way that meets certain key principles. So the principles that we look at within the program is how do we ensure that these data exploitation tools can be delivered in a way that are appropriately safe, secure, and trustworthy, that they can also be used in a way that is ethical, and really importantly, can be used in a way that is sustainable. And we don't just mean that from an environmental perspective. So clearly, if we are thinking that we can use these digital twins to contribute to the decarbonisation agenda, we need to ensure that the tools themselves are also sustainable, that they are not generating more carbon than they're actually saving. They also need, however, to be sustainable over the lifetime of assets. So we need to ensure that they are realistically scalable and adoptable and usable over the lifetime of assets and systems. So we're very good at thinking about what we need within a CapEx phase when there's a lot more capability and resource very often, but then actually as we move into the lifetime of assets and systems, that resource and sometimes that capability can diminish. And we need to ensure that if we are really to get the benefit out of these types of tools, that we can continue to use them over that lifetime. So the program is really divided into two key horizontal themes. So the first one is this ability to facilitate better information sharing. So how do we overcome this challenge that we have about moving information across organization and sectorial boundaries in a way where sensitive information, be that commercially sensitive information, be it information that is sensitive from a personal data perspective or from a national security perspective, is protected, and only those people that have a genuine need to know that information can access it. We also need to be really sure that the information is going to be there when people need to make critical decisions. We need to ensure that people can understand the quality of the information that they are party to. So this whole thing about right information to the right people at the right time, and ensuring the user understands the quality of the information so they are able to determine whether it is fit for the purpose to which they want to be able to put it. This really means as well, rather than pushing for data to be of a certain quality before it is shared, this ensures that we can actually start driving benefit far quicker from the information, because there's hopefully less effort that has to be put in to be able to share that information in the first place and to bring that data up to that level of quality. And I think that's something that's really important, is that how do we lower barrier to adoption, ensure people can move up through the process of digital maturity and gain benefit as they go, and understand really the benefits that we get from the tools as they do that. The second horizontal stream really is then what we can start doing with that information once we are able to better share it in that trusted, secure and resilient way. So we look at a whole range of data exploitation tools. And again, this is where really the digital twin element comes in. But I think it's really important to emphasize that the answer to everything is not necessarily digital twin. There are an awful lot of digital exploitation tools that we can use before we get to digital twin that will deliver benefit. And in certain cases, certain use cases, I don't think we will ever necessarily need to use digital twin. We need to be very mindful of, as I mentioned earlier, that carbon footprint, the environmental footprint that comes with these types of tools, and ensuring we are using the right tools for the job to drive the benefit that we need from them. But there is no doubt that these tools can really support far better decision making, and ultimately then as well delivery of better outcomes. And we've been able to see that through some of the work that we've been doing in the programme to date. The programme is then divided into 4 pillars, and those horizontal themes run throughout these 4 pillars. So the first one is really looking at the operating framework. So if you like, the policy wrapper that needs to sit around all of this. So what are those frameworks that we need to have in place to ensure that we can use these tools and processes in the way that is required to deliver against those principles of things like safety, security, ethics, sustainability, etc. So we do a lot of work looking at sustainability. It's something that's extremely important to us. And certainly all of the tools that we develop, we look very much at what are the right tools for the job, but also then once we develop the tools, what is the environmental impact of all of those tools? And it's something that we require all of our suppliers to consider and to be able to measure in the work that they develop for us, so that we have evidence of that, if you like, that carbon footprint that we are ourselves generating in the work and the tools that we are developing. The second pillar looks at data and technology, and that is everything from understanding what the data sources are that we can be able to pull on, the data quality that we are able to access. So what are the right data sources? How do we understand authoritative data sources? And what are the right data sources that we should be using for particular use cases? How do I identify and use those? How do we ensure that that data then becomes interoperable? And again, how do we do that in a way that is as low barrier to adoption as possible? And we do that through something that we are developing called the integration architecture, which is a distributed system that will allow data to be exchanged across organization and sectorial boundaries in a way that has a high level of security and trust, but also resilience as well, and is done in a way that, again, as much as possible, is as low environmental impact as we can. This pillar also then looks very much at data exploitation, so the tools we are then able to sit on top of that information. And importantly, it's not only the information that has to be interoperable, but how do we bring these data exploitation tools together in a way that they themselves are interoperable without building and increasing the level of risk and uncertainty within those models by bringing those together. And also, everything that we do is produced to be open source. And this is really important for us in the ability to really accelerate adoption of others in these technologies and processes, in order to ensure that we can, the investment that we make is then available to others and saves all of that rework that would need to happen. So this is something that is extremely important to us. And we've seen the first open source release of the integration architecture work a couple of months ago, and we will continue to do that as the program evolves and develop all of these streams. Recognizing this isn't just about data and technology and processes, it's really important that we also think about skills and culture. So looking at what skills we need to develop, not only in the current generation, but the next generation as well. And looking at how we engage and push out the material that we are producing. And then lastly, really, which I want to then talk about more for the rest of this keynote, is our demonstrator program. And this is where we take the exercises, the lessons, the tools that we develop across the other three pillars and bash them up against real life problems. And this is really important to ensure that those principles that we have are actually really deliverable against real life problems. So are they really truly scalable and adoptable? Are they as use case agnostic as possible? Do they drive the types of benefits that we all talk about, that we anticipate the digital twins and other types of data exploitation tools will be able to deliver us? And are they as low barrier to adoption as we hope as well? So can they be used by a wide range of organisations with different levels of technical capability and resource? And a couple of these are particularly relevant to the decarbonisation agenda. So in the UK here, we have a very old housing stock. It tends to be very energy inefficient, and this is something that is recognised as being a major contributor to our carbon footprint here within the UK. So there is a big drive to look at how do we improve our housing stock through a programme of retrofitting to improve its energy efficiency. And I think what's really important to say with this is that it just really demonstrates sometimes how little data you need to bring together and how uncomplicated the exploitation tools that you then need to be able to use that information can be in order to really start driving benefit and accelerating areas. So we took just two data sources in this piece of work to date. We are looking to extend this, but as I say, this is about really demonstrating and growing complexity and demonstrating the benefit for every time we increase complexity. So take a couple of data sources, bring them through that sort of whole data cleansing process, which at this point we did outside the integration architecture. Bring it through the integration architecture so that all of that information then becomes interoperable, and then push that into a data exploitation tool that was developed. Now, this is certainly not digital twin, the tool that was developed here. This was very much what we would regard to be as a digital model. So something that you'll be sort of probably not particularly blown away by, but something that actually really interestingly would drive real benefit, or has been proved to drive real benefit, not only for the local authority in terms of looking at how it targets resources and understands the housing stock that it has on within its area, but also for retrofit companies in terms of their ability to accelerate the targeting of properties where they are particularly energy inefficient, and also supporting the third sector, so the voluntary sector that support individuals, households living in these properties to understand what they can potentially do, or what options are available to them in order to have their properties retrofitted and improve the energy efficiency and minimize that challenge that we see around the cost of energy, of heating homes, and sometimes for households posing that challenge of heat or eat. So what do they do? Do they heat their property, or do they actually be able to eat properly? So this is something that's really important. And what we saw even within the retrofit companies was a very simple tool like this, driving a 20% saving in the amount of time it takes them to identify particular properties. Then that becomes time that can be used in actually retrofitting those properties. So just to really emphasize, I think we do get very enthusiastic and rightly about the potential of things like digital twin, but there are things that we can do on the way to get into that will really drive and support benefits, particularly within the decarbonisation agenda. And then secondly, one of our other demonstrators is looking at the broader energy system, and looking in particular here at how we can use these sorts of technologies and processes to understand the capability of getting 300 megawatt of new renewable energy into a particular area. And again, going through a very meticulous process about really understanding what the problem is, and what the right tools are for the job to be able to start addressing this problem. So this particular demonstrator will push a little bit beyond digital model to something we call digital shadow, Freudian slip. So starting to take data streams from the real world and pushing them into to digital models in order to be able to update those and to be able to start scenario planning in the digital world. When we talk about digital twin, we then talk about pushing that data, pushing decisions back into the physical world, pushing data and influencing the physical world automatically. So this is much more about that digital shadow space, so the one-way flow of information. But again, just really demonstrates about actually how far you can start to use tools that we already have in the toolbox to be able to contribute and drive this digitalisation, this decarbonisation agenda. And we also work with a number, and this has already been alluded to in the video at the beginning, about the work that we do across sectors. In particular, at the moment, we have a collaboration agreement with National Grid ESO, working with our colleagues very much in DESNA. So James is on the call today, and also Ofgem, to really look at how, again, these sorts of tools can contribute to how we better manage the grid going forward to meet the agenda that we have in terms of improving the energy provision and the decarbonisation agenda. So hopefully that has been of interest and gives a little bit of a taste of the sort of work that we're doing in order to contribute to the digital twin capability, growing that market within the UK, but importantly looking at how we drive that market, in particular key policy areas, with decarbonisation being a critical one of those. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. And I mean, amazing to hear your experiences and journey that you've been through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, amazing to hear your journey, and just so much of that resonates with infrastructures that I've worked with previously. I know with Pascal, who'll be speaking on our panel, but just the importance of ethics and trustworthiness, making sure that you lower the barriers to adoption so that people can actually get up and using the data and the technology as quickly as possible. Yeah, the right data at the right time. I know, Simon, we've spoken about that, and I'm sure you'll bring that out in the panel as well. And you know, it is a journey, and having the right technology that doesn't increase the issues that we have as we try and decarbonize and make the best uses of our resources. And so that was a terrific overview for us. I'll now pass to Simon Evans, who will be introducing our panel and hosting our discussion.
Brilliant. Thank you, Serryn. And thank you, Alex, for that really, really great keynote. A really exciting development opportunities happening, and totally agree with use case driven approach to how we can develop and implement digital twins, digital models and digital shadows. And yeah, very much the right time data, not necessarily real time data to make those decisions. So as introduced, I'm Simon Evans, and I have the privilege today of hosting this panel. We have 4 panelists that will be joining me on screen in a second across 4 different time zones and 4 different sectors, which is really, really exciting. And we'll be exploring pretty much the topic of how could, not necessarily how are, because I know these things are in development across various sectors, digital twins and digital asset management accelerate decarbonisation in these sectors. So throughout the panel, if you have any questions for our panelists, please do put them into the Q&A box that will be showing on your screen, and we'll get to those towards the end of the agenda. But first, what I'll do is I'll hand over to each of our panelists very briefly, ask them to introduce themselves, their organisation, what they're looking at, and then we'll open up discussions. So Victor, please introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Simon. My name is Victor Khoo. I'm the director in the Geospatial and Survey Division of Singapore Land Authority. So my main role is in survey and geomatics. I think one of the roles that I take is in the digital transformation of the geomatics sector in Singapore for the past 20 years. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And then James and Pascal and Rick.
Hi, everyone. And good morning, I would say, from the United Kingdom. My name's James Morgan. I'm Head of Energy Digitalisation at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. That means that I spend a lot of time thinking about developing the right policies for the UK government to accelerate decarbonisation through data and digitalisation.
Pascal, please.
Pascal Perez, I'm the director of the Australian Urban Research Infrastructure Network in Australia. We're funded by the Australian government to provide data and digital support to researchers in Australia working on infrastructure and urban systems.
Rick, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good day. I'm Rick. I'm from Alibaba Holding Group. I'm the Senior Workplace Operation Director. I oversee the global campus operation and ESG initiatives in Alibaba. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you all. So I guess the first question I'd love to get your thoughts on in your respective sectors and countries and markets you operate is that first one, the title of our webinar here is how could, not necessarily are, digital twins and digital asset management accelerating decarbonisation in the world that you see? So Victor, I'd be interested to get your thoughts first from the Singapore perspective of how this is happening.
Thank you, Simon. So in Singapore, my team in Singapore Land Authority, we initiated the project known as the National 3D Mapping Program since 2014. So this is a program, a very upstream program to capture data. So we believe that the data comes from the real world, capture data, imagery, as well as point cloud from above the ground, aerial mapping, as well as mobile mapping. So the work is capturing raw data and then produce a digital twins, inverted comma. In this case, is digital terrain model, 3D city models, coastline, everything in 3D in a different data type. And we support the usage of this data type in various digital twin applications, which include to ensure that the city of Singapore is safe, sustainable, and smart. So I think it's a very huge, large area that we are supporting in terms of application using the data, the raw data that we capture and producing it into 3D models and applications. Thank you.
And it's good to see the kind of the start of the acceleration development of these programs across Singapore and kind of the potential it could bring. And I know, James, from a UK perspective, there's huge strides forwards in looking at how digital data and ultimately digital twins could start to facilitate and move towards decarbonisation. From the government's perspective in the UK, what kind of things are you seeing and looking at?
Yes, a lot going on for sure. And the main aspect to mention from the UK government perspective is that our government has set out a pretty clear target for decarbonising our power sector by 2030. Making that happen is complex. There's quite a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and really you can apply data and digitalisation tools to a whole range of those different pieces. I'll just start with one in particular, which is that, of course, decarbonising the power sector means there's an increased reliance on intermittent renewable generation. So generating energy when the wind is blowing and when the sun is shining, which it does occasionally do here in the UK. Modelling, understanding and making decisions on how to operate a system that's dependent on that sort of generation is complex. And so system operators, network operators really need to understand all the information that they can so that the energy system can run in a decarbonised way. To do that in a quick way, data and digitalisation is the only way forward.
Yeah, so allowing you to make those better decisions faster, otherwise we can never really hit that pathway. And I know, Pascal, from an AURIN perspective, you're investigating some really interesting aspects there, and I think that connects quite nicely. And how are you seeing the potential of digital twins to accelerate digital and digital asset management to accelerate decarbonisation for you?
Thank you, Simon. From an Australian perspective, I'm glad that you had a word of caution about whether it's now it's happening or it's going to happen in the near future. So I think for Australia, we're probably more on the near future. But nevertheless, I'll start with the decarbonisation point, because recently Infrastructure Australia has released a very interesting report about embodied carbon projections for the infrastructure and building industries. And this sets the scene for Australia, but I think for the rest of the world as well, where Australia is not a big emitter, but we're emitting for the moment 530 million tons of CO2 per year. A third of this 530 million is from building and infrastructure at large. And in that portion, a third of it is operational, as you would expect, but a third is embodied carbon. And so now if we step back, digital twins and the digital world, how it can help accelerating the decarbonisation, we need to look at tools that will help us on both sides, not only the operational, but also the embodied. And the beauty is that we've got bits and pieces already in Australia happening. A lot of companies like Arup have developed and developing on daily basis now BIM models for big projects at least. Starting to embed environmental product declaration for these beams is the first step to accelerate. Then in terms of operational carbon, there's a lot of industries, factories, but also commercial buildings now having smart sensing, so-called smart sensing. I'll come back to it probably later on, to try to at least record what's happening. And that's where the shortcut is a bit dangerous. It's not because you record that you do anything about it. You need to make sure that you create knowledge out of that. So I think we've got a bit and pieces that at bigger scale, each state in this federal country of ours is developing a digital twin. And at national level, we've got the Digital Atlas of Australia being developed by Geoscience Australia that will be the mother of all the digital twins, hopefully one day, but again, we're just at the start of the journey.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting how that kind of full life cycle approach, making sure that we're not just considering design, build, or operate, bring it together is going to be so key for this. And really resonates that idea of how we can start to think of these things much more in a systems of systems approach, rather than I'm going to do my twin or my process here. It's how do these come together to really solve the problem. And Rick, I know from the Alibaba perspective, you have obviously quite a large organization, large asset base. You must be seeing some really interesting perspectives when it comes to the potential for digital twins and digital asset management for you.
Okay. Currently, we manage over 140 campuses and offices worldwide. And we also have a very ambitious goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. And today, I'd like to share with you some practices and how we are leveraging digital technologies to accelerate our decarbonization efforts to meet our commitment. As you have known, Alibaba is a technical company, and we recognize that digital technologies are pivotal in achieving our sustainability goals. Here, we have several ways we are employing these technologies. The first is IoT and smart devices. The Internet of Things and the smart devices play a fundamental role in our efforts. And by deploying this technology, and we can connect data, and we also can do remote management for our office worldwide. And it also helps us to accelerate our decarbonization process. For example, IoT sensors provide detailed information on our air quality and energy consumptions and more, which allows us to make data-driven decisions. And also, the smart devices allow us to manage a facility remotely. You know, in the traditional building management system, which was deployed by locally, and for the organization like Alibaba, we have many offices. We cannot oversee the carbon emission worldwide. So we have developed a so-called smart smart workplace operation system, which enables to do the remote control and monitor all the campus by Alibaba Cloud. So and also the IoT and smart devices provide real-time online data, which can help us track our carbon footprint day to day. And also the second is the digital twin technology. Based on the installed smart devices and sensors, we are able to implement digital twin technology to create digital models of our physical campuses. These digital twins integrate real-time data from IoT devices and sensors, and providing us an accurate and dynamic picture of our facility conditions, occupancy rate, and energy consumptions. So this technology helps us to monitor and optimize our energy usage. Actually, by connecting and analyzing real-time data, we can identify inefficiency and optimize energy consumption patterns. Through predictive analytics, we can foresee equipment failures and schedule our maintenance proactively, reducing downtime and energy waste. And we are also doing the simulating different scenarios, which enables to plan and implement energy efficient programs. So we can change our operation without without disrupting daily activities.
Mm.
Artificial intelligence and machine learning are also critical to our strategy. And we use these tools to analyze big data. We can uncover hidden patterns and trends and guiding our decision-making process for our sustainability initiatives. As I mentioned before, traditional building management system is deployed by local, so the data is separated just like solo. So by by using our self-developed operating system, we can upload all the information and the data to Alibaba Cloud. So then we can use the AI assist in forecasting any demand and supply, and helping us to balancing our energy portfolios, and also integrate renewable energy sources more effectively. So right now, all our BMS is AI driven, so they can adjust lighting, heating, and cooling based on our occupancy and our external conditions, and minimize energy use.
It's really, I mean, it shows that the need for tangible solutions and tangible outcomes is going to be so key here. And what I think is really interesting in what you're saying, and from what all of you just kind of responded to that first part, it was obvious in how you were talking that the technical side is a big area of focus, quite rightly, but you're also alluding to the fact that this isn't really just a technical problem at all. There's a huge much more that needs to be addressed. And I guess I'd argue to the audience here as well that we're listening that this is very much a socio-technical problem. And that socio side, the policy, the regulatory, the legal aspects are probably the bigger challenge to many of the organisations in the countries we face. I'd be interested, James, from your perspective, if we're looking at, let's say, the barriers and challenges to achieving this longer term kind of success from technology, what are the kind of things that you're seeing from that socio side, that policy, legal process aspect that could be impactful here?
Yeah, it's a very interesting area. And actually, Simon, I'm going to start with the technical and describe how it leads to the socio side. And it touches a little bit on what Alexandra Lux said in the keynote about the tools that help you get to digitalisation, standardisation, collaboration, and some of the Asians. So obviously, you need organisations to buy in to changing the way they do things, and make the investments that they would like to integrate with digital tools and platforms. But to get there, you need to make it clear to them why they want to do it and why they might want to do it in the first place. And I think one of the first challenges from a government perspective actually is really quantitatively and qualitatively describing what the key benefits are of these upfront investments and how the benefits could come further. They could come immediately and they can come further down the line. To touch on solutions a little bit, one thing that we're trying to do as UK government is try and show a bit of leadership in this space by specifying what we want to see from certain projects. We've got a really interesting project being run by the electricity system operator to develop a data sharing infrastructure to bring organisations together to work out how they can share data and exchange data in the first place that can help you get to those digital tools. So you need to describe what the rules are, the rules of the game, so to speak, but you also need to bring people along on the journey as well. Government has a role, but I think everyone on this call also has a role to spread the word as well.
Absolutely, that collaborate on the rules, compete on the game aspect is a phrase I've copied from somebody else that I think is potentially a good way of framing that from my perspective anyway. Pascal, I'd be really interested to hear, similar from yourself, the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing, particularly as you start looking at the kind of the broader system of systems thinking. What are you seeing in this space?
as usual, devil lies in the details. And I guess the building blocks are the data and data sets we can collect, again, thinking embodied and operational carbon and energy consumption. We need to make sure that we don't stack together apples and oranges within the same city, with the same building, the same city, the same state, or even different ones. Then I think one of the challenges is the fact that even if interoperability of tools has made great progress, and it's back to acceleration, it's accelerating definitely, still work needs to be done. For technical people on this call, they will be just smiling when I say that integrating beams into three-dimensional GISs is still a challenge for many of us. And so let's not even think about having more dynamic models just stitch up to these digital twins. So there's still a lot of challenges we have to face. The good news, I think, at least in Australia, is that the challenge is so big and the problem is so common that I hope that collaboration is a dominant model and not competition. I think we have to go into it, public sector, private sector, and try to see where's everybody's problem, no one solution for the moment. And that's one of the roles of AURIN. But I'd like to go back full circle here in terms of challenges. I think that I'm old enough, to have been playing with first generation of AI models, and basically a BIM model, for example, tells you what is there. Your smart sensing in buildings tell you how things happen. There's one question that none of these two tools for the moment can answer, is the why. Why is this happening? And the why is about the people, the buildings, the precincts, the cities. They rely on people. And as long as we don't understand how people react to policies, why people do what they're doing, I think these digital twins will be orphans of some sort if we don't have, forget the pun. And that's the big thing. And if we bring people in the models, of course, there's all the ethics about it. And we should always think first of engaging with people before we start trying to simulate more people. I'm an old agent-based modeler, so I'm coming with my scenes here.
That's fair enough. And it's back to that use case part, isn't it? Otherwise, we're just doing technology for the sake of technology, and that never ever works, does it? After a while, people get slightly disillusioned by it. I just think it's really, really interesting. And just to our attendees who are listening into this, if you do have any questions, of course, to our speakers, do post them into the Q&A box you'll see on the screen, and we'll get to those towards the end of the segment, if we could. Victor, interested to hear from a Singapore perspective. Similarly, what are the barriers and opportunities for you in that?
Right. So I actually agree with Pascal. I think data is the building block, the geospatial data. So in SLA, we actually go upstream, capture the data, create the data. But having the data, having good data, having open source data, having consistent standard data is still not good enough. I think collaboration is important in order to bring the real benefit to the, in order to accelerate the decarbonisation, we need to collaborate with research institutes, with agencies who are the user of this data set, these digital twin data sets. So for example, in Singapore's context, we work with a research center to develop the first nationwide solar potential map, of all rooftop of Singapore. Every one of it, how much solar you can harness from that rooftop. So this is very important steps for decarbonisation in Singapore. I think I just give that as an example. In terms of challenges, I definitely also agree with Pascal that data integration is very key. Every single source of data may be coming from different parties. They have different, from a geospatial or georeference perspective, they may have different datum. For example, currently I'm leading a team from the UN Global Geospatial Information Management to look into integration of data between sea and land. As all of us understand that the datum used for the mapping or for the capturing data on land, especially for height, is quite different from what is happening in the marine environment, and there is a gap in between. And for effective use of digital twin, especially from the aspect of addressing climate challenges, the coastal area is very important, and there is a issue of data integration or data integration from that perspective. So there are many areas, especially for the data from different domain. Sea, land is 2 different domain. Built environment and topographic is another 2 different domain. Mapping and cadastral, another few different domains. We are actively now looking into the integration of the data from a different domain and try to come up with a framework that will address all these data integration. And back to you, Simon.
Thank you, Victor. And I think the really interesting thing both you and Pascal have said there is that it comes back to the data, doesn't it? That we pick these buzzwords. We're using digital twin and AI or digital asset management in this context, but you could pick artificial intelligence, machine learning, pick any buzzword, and they always seem to skip over or forget the fact that you can't really achieve them unless you have good data, and the data is in a consistent form and a reliable form. So really, if we could reduce the friction and barrier of that data being curated, shared even, then we can start to achieve that vision. But yeah, Rick, it'd be interesting, Alibaba perspective, what do you see from the barriers and opportunities in this space?
Actually, the mentioned technology is important, but our journey towards carbon neutrality is not just about adopting new technologies. It's also about embedding sustainability in our culture and operations. And our employees are encouraged to reduce carbon emission in our day-to-day operations by our digital applications. Actually, every year there are more than 100,000 employees participating in various ESG activities organized by our teams.
This is it's good to see that we're starting to move forward with it as well. And we'll come to hand over to questions and answers in a second to Serryn. But before we do, I'd be really interested to get a quick fire answer, if we could, from you all, on what do you see as the real future trends and opportunities in this space? I guess as an opener from our perspective as Arup, we're very much seeing, as I was just alluding there, that so much focus is on the longer term unicorn, dare I say it, of this technology buzzword. But if we boil it back to having good data in a consistent, reliable form as the first adjacent step, that's where you start to really accelerate and get traction. So how can we really focus on the here and now and get a return on investment of the use cases? But yes, I guess, Victor, maybe I'll start with yourself first. What do you see as in a quick fire answer, the future trends and opportunities in this space of digital twins, digital asset management, or anything else?
So thank you, Simon. We are really at the beginning of this journey, of utilizing very consistent and good digital twin in our work. From the data perspective, obviously there is a lot of work that we need to do. In Singapore's context, we are focusing on a city level scale of data. So we try to capture as complete as possible, as consistent as possible at the city level, so that analysis, so that all the work that we're doing, we know that we can fulfill at that level. But there are higher level or higher resolution at precision level, at building level. So all these are about data capturing, creating consistent data sets across the board that can be used in the different domain. So the future is really about having technology, having processes that can do this, go high resolution, go high frequency, do this at very high update rates, and prepare all these data set that can be ready for all the different digital twin applications.
Brilliant. What about yourself, Pascal? What would you see in a quick fire answer, the future trends and opportunities?
I think we've got the answers in this call. There's the major enterprise model described by Rick with Alibaba, in control of all the data and putting the investment and the thinking and engaging the culture and the people. It's fantastic. If this could happen at the level of a state like Australia, nearly all the problems are solved. And then Victor with Singapore, a very special nation, as we know, nation city, very compact, but very efficient as well. And I had the chance to chat with Victor recently and saying, for me, back to decarbonization and climate change, that's why we decarbonize in the first place. I think the best example at country level of a well-organized framework, data and modeling in order to tackle climate change is the Cooling Singapore 2.0 program in Singapore. I think it's second to none in the world, and there's a lot to learn from that. So I'm a very happy man. I think I'm very hopeful listening to Rick and Victor.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Pascal. And on that, Rick, what's the quick fire answer to future opportunities from a Alibaba perspective?
Actually, we started our ESG program just 4 years ago. And right now, only some big company in China, they have made the commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. I think we just at the beginning of the journey of our, in China. So I think there are very big opportunity in here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rick. And final words from yourself, James.
Very quickly, to decarbonise the UK economy, you need engaged consumers and businesses. I think consumers and businesses are becoming more and more interested and engaged with data and digital tools. Actually, if we can get the products and the services right, there's a huge opportunity there to really bring people along with the decarbonisation journey. Loads more to talk about on that front, but let's keep going.
Very good. Thank you, James. And thank you to all our panelists. Serryn, back to you for the Q&A.
Fantastic, thank you, and what an engaging discussion. And I do agree. I think we have the answers here. We've just got to keep collaborating, keep talking, and keep sharing those stories and overcoming the hurdles. We do have one question that's come in quickly for Pascal. What is the biggest challenge to decarbonising in Australia, and which major city is the most difficult, do you think? And do we have the same goals to decarbonise by 2050 as the UK has? So there's a few tricky ones in there.
On the last one, I haven't checked the details, but I don't think the targets are exactly the same. On the cities question, I will diplomatically kick the ball off the field, if you don't mind. I don't want to have any trouble when I'm going on holidays. But more seriously, the biggest challenge in Australia is, unfortunately, its administrative fabric, being a federated country where we tend to duplicate too much to my taste. But again, back to acceleration and optimism in this call and in this webinar. Things are changing relatively fast now. But it took some time to realize that probably at state level and Commonwealth level, things had to be streamlined a bit more than what they are. We still have to standards across jurisdictions for data, back to data, but we're getting there. But this is the major hurdle, I think.
Terrific, thank you. And with just 1 minute to go, I'd just like to really thank each of you for your contributions in this panel discussion. I have made a number of notes and will be keen to follow up with each of you on those. I really took home the importance of people in this discussion. So the technology is going well and we're developing it quickly, but it's really about how we actually integrate and get the people who are able to do the collaboration to build the integration and systems that we need, and actually to make the changes, because a lot of it comes back to human behaviour. So listening to Rick talk about how Alibaba staff are then able to act on the information that they're able to get, and I imagine that's similar around the world. We all have those common challenges to face. So thank you very much. It's now time to leave. I wish you good day and good evening.
Thank you very much.